Well, hello, and welcome to Studio Classroom. On the air, your English will improve today. I hope you believe it. I certainly do. I'm your teacher, Gabe. Now, what kind of learning environments have you had experience with? I went to a private school in Taichung from elementary to high school, but I also remember going to cram school in the evenings for math when I was little. I don't like math. Now, I went to a university in Los Angeles, which of course had a classroom setting, but I've never taken an online course. Today's lesson is called, Where Do Students Learn Best? Which is better, studying online or studying on a campus in a classroom setting? Today we are going to weigh the pros and the cons of both. And what does it mean to weigh the pros and cons? Of course, you'll find out about that and much more. So, let's get started.
Where do students learn best? Weighing the pros and cons of studying online versus studying on a campus. Ned and Miles are students at different colleges. Ned is enrolled in an online school, while Miles attends classes on a school campus. The two students each stubbornly insist that their school system is better than the other.
Hey, Miles! Are you free to see a movie tomorrow night?
Sorry, no. I have a class tomorrow and I still have a lot of work to finish up.
Oh, that's too bad. I'm so glad I take classes online. I have a flexible schedule.
I actually really enjoy going to class because it's a great way to get to know other people. It also helps me learn how to work well with others.
And our lesson is about the idea of whether you should study in a classroom setting or study online. And we have a couple of different opinions that you're going to see. But Rebecca, first of all, I just wanted to ask you, I know that you've studied in a classroom setting sometimes, but have you also studied online?
Actually, I have. I've done both. When I was in high school, I took a couple of online college courses. Yes, I was in high school, you heard me correctly, but I was also taking some college courses while I was in high school. And then when I was actually in college, I've taken several online classes.
Oh, really? So how was that for you? Did you like doing the online classes at the same time as taking other classes?
Well, you know, there are definitely pros and cons to taking online classes. I think the thing that was hardest for me is I'm not with classmates. I did have classmates. They just lived in different parts of the country. And we actually did have a set time, a set class time every week that we were required to attend.
Okay.
But in general, I enjoyed it because there definitely is more flexibility when it comes to submitting your work and that kind of stuff.
Well, maybe you can share some more opinions with us or some more thoughts as we go through our lesson. Those are some great things. Friends, Rebecca mentioned the idea of weighing the pros and cons. She also talked about flexibility, which is what our lesson discusses as well. These are great things for us to discuss. First of all, when we think about weighing pros and cons, when I think about it, I think about someone writing a list out like this. Perhaps you have one list of the pros, that is the advantages to doing something, and then the other side is the cons, that is the disadvantages, the negative things about doing that.
That's right. For example, when moving to a new place, you must weigh the pros and cons. Like when I decided to come to Taiwan, I had to weigh the pros and cons because it was a big decision.
Yeah, exactly. Did you write out the pros and cons in a list like that, or was it kind of more of a mental thing, or in a journal, or?
Good question. It was more of a mental thing. And then I did spend a little bit of time journaling, and of course I spent a lot of time praying about it as well. So I didn't actually write a list like, pros, cons. this is why I want to move. This is why I shouldn't move. It was more of a mental thing, and then I did spend some time journaling about it.
That's right. So friends, there are different ways to weigh the pros and cons, and one great way is by talking about it with somebody else, just like what's happening in our lesson. So Ned and Miles are they're students at different colleges. Ned is enrolled in an online school, while Miles attends classes on a school campus. The two students each stubbornly insist that their school system is better than the other. I've never taken an online class of any kind. I've been curious about what that's like. I liked my college experience when, just going to the classrooms and learning with my classmates. So this lesson is interesting to me because there are pros to having online classes.
I think in general, if someone enjoys studying on their own, taking an online course may be a better choice. Like for myself, I have a hard time sitting in a classroom and listening to a teacher lecture. I would prefer to read the information myself.
Oh, okay, I see. All right. Well, we all have different learning styles. And here we're getting into the beginning of this conversation. Ned says, "Hey, Miles, are you free to see a movie tomorrow night?" Miles can't because he has a lot of things to finish up. "That's too bad," Ned says. "I'm so glad I take classes online. I have a flexible schedule." And yes, Rebecca was talking about flexibility earlier. In Chinese, you might say 弹性, right? That is, you're able to move or adjust with ease. It's not difficult to do.
That's right. And when I was saying that I had a flexible schedule, that just means that I didn't necessarily have to be in class Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. However, there were still deadlines. I had class assignments that had to be turned in. But maybe I could do those assignments on my own time instead of by a real strict schedule.
Right. So there's flexibility in that way. Perhaps that appeals to you if you're out there thinking about whether you should take online classes or not. Well, Miles says, "I actually really enjoy going to class because it's a great way to get to know other people." I think I'm kind of like Miles in that sense. I mean, I'm just such an outgoing person to begin with. I do like being in that classroom setting and developing those relationships with classmates, doing group projects.
And Miles also says, "It also helps me learn how to work well with others. You might get to do group projects and possibly read books together." But speaking of books, it's important that you don't judge a book by its cover.
And we need to take a look at that phrase in the
Info Cloud.
Hello friends, welcome to InfoCloud. I recently had a very interesting experience with reading books. Our colleague Linda keeps telling me how good this old book from the 80s is and wants me to read it. At first, I didn't want to read it.
Why is that, Rex?
Because the book is old and the cover design is very outdated. When I finally decided to read it, I found that it is really good and I couldn't put it down.
Well, it's just like what people say. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Yes, literally. We never know how good the content of a book is by looking at the cover. But this expression can also be used figuratively.
That's right. It means not to judge something or someone by their appearance. My rebellious cousin later became a successful businessman. You can't judge a book by its cover.
Or you can say, this new company is facing some challenges, but don't judge a book by its cover.
This expression can be used to remind people not to judge anything or anyone by the way they look. You may be surprised by the way things turn out.
Welcome back to Studio Classroom. Our lesson is called Where Do Students Learn Best? We're weighing the pros and cons of studying online versus studying in a classroom setting like at a university or college. Well, one of the perks or benefits of studying online is that you can have a little more of a flexible schedule. After all, Ned is going to a movie, but his friend Miles cannot because he needs to be in class, or it has to do with being in a classroom setting. Well, What do you think about this idea so far? We have yet to finish today's part of the conversation, so let's continue.
Where do students learn best?
But isn't it sometimes frustrating when you have to work around your class schedule? I can decide when, where, and how to complete my assignments. It saves a lot of time.
I do encounter scheduling conflicts from time to time, but it's not too bothersome. Besides, learning in a classroom eliminates misinterpretation.
What do you mean?
If I don't understand something, I'm always able to ask about it in person. That saves me time and prevents misunderstanding.
In an online class, I have to think thoroughly before asking questions. That teaches me how to solve problems on my own.
So what does Ned say here? But isn't it sometimes frustrating when you have to work around your class schedule? That's why he likes taking online classes. His schedule is flexible. He doesn't have to fit in what he wants to do around his class meeting times. Let's take a look at that phrase, to work around something in our lesson. This is to arrange or organize something so that you can avoid the problems because something may be in the way. So if you have a class that you need to go to, that's in the way from what you want to do. You need to work around that.
Exactly. For example, someone might tell you, when you practice piano, you must work around the baby's nap schedule, meaning that you can't practice at the same time the baby is taking a nap.
That's a great example. Think of another situation where you might need to work around somebody else's schedule or time or what they're doing. Actually, if you want to know more details about this phrase, you can take a look in your magazine because it is the usage tip for this lesson. Ned says, I can decide when, where, and how to complete my assignments. It saves a lot of time. It sounds like you figured that out as well, Rebecca.
Oh, you mean how with my online class, I can work around? Right. You know, honestly, I think that no matter what you decide to do, you just learn to adjust. If you have a class schedule, you learn that this is your class schedule and that's just the way it is. If you're taking an online class, you realize maybe there's a little bit more flexibility, and that works well too.
That's very true. Well, we continue here. Miles says, I do encounter scheduling conflicts from time to time. And before we continue with his line, let's take a look at that phrase from the word bank. From time to time. There are several ways in English that we can talk about sometimes or every once in a while, every now and then. In Chinese, you might say or. So, from time to time.
For example, James loves to exercise. Usually, he likes to go to the gym. But from time to time, he does enjoy going running.
Oh, no, he's not like me. I never enjoy going running, not even from time to time.
Oh, right. I believe that because I know a few months ago, you decided not to take part in our Let's Run event.
Well, I was there just, doing something else, encouraging people as they ran. But yes, back to Miles's line. He encounters conflicts from time to time, but it's not too bothersome. It's not too annoying to him. Besides, learning in a classroom eliminates misinterpretation.
And then Ned asks, what do you mean? Well, Miles says, if I don't understand something, I'm always able to ask about it in person. That saves me time and prevents misunderstanding, which he does make a very valid point.
Right. It's true most of the time that communication is better face-to-face or in person because there's less of a chance that you might misunderstand the other person or misinterpret what they're writing in an email. Ned says, in an online class, I have the time to think through I have to think thoroughly before asking questions. I sort of looked at that line before saying that. I should have looked at it thoroughly before saying anything, right?
And that's right. He says, that teaches me how to solve problems on my own. And once again, Ned makes a very valid point. Well, friends, I hope you haven't made up your mind yet about which is better.
Why not?
because we have more to learn next time. But right now, it's time for the SC Challenge.
For today's SC Challenge, let's see who is playing with us. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda, and I am so pumped to be here.
And my name is Brandon. I'm super excited to be here as well.
And in their hands, they're holding cards that have today's word bank words and more information words on them. I have them here too. Stubbornly, finish up, from time to time, thoroughly, misinterpretation, and bothersome. Quite different words and phrases. So, right now we're going to have a keyword conversation. It's not a competition, it's a conversation. Let's see if we can use all of these keywords in this thing that we create. Linda, how about you begin? You don't have to be Linda in the conversation. We could create something new.
Okay, let's do it. All right. Well, Dawn, we thoroughly enjoyed the concert last night. Your students did a great job.
It wasn't too bothersome for you guys to come.
Nice. Not at all. It's nice to see student performances from time to time.
Yeah, there was one student who was having trouble with her violin solo, but she stubbornly persisted to the end.
Nice.
Ah, yes. Monica, she finished up nicely, yeah?
Wow, guys, so far so good. We're left with one word, misinterpretation. How am I supposed to use that word in this story?
I could tell there was no misinterpretation of the feel of the music.
Oh, nice save, Linda. Thank you. Okay, let's do that again for another challenge. This time making up a keyword story. Brandon, you start.
Okay. Chuck Smith has to stay late at the office after work from time to time.
Good. But today he finished up his work right at 6 o'clock and left the office.
He was happy at first, but that's because he forgot how bothersome traffic can be at that time.
After an hour of waiting in traffic, he was thoroughly angry.
Or maybe not angry. Maybe that's a misinterpretation of his facial expression, Brandon.
Wow, Gabe. It looks like we're stubbornly trying to use all of these words no matter how the story turns out.
Yes, you're right. Okay, well, friends, it can be a challenge, but now it is your turn. Try to create your own short story or conversation using the keywords from our lesson. That is all the time we have for today's SC Challenge. Okay, well, Miles and Ned both brought up some very good points about studying online and also studying in a classroom. And I have to agree with Miles that you can avoid certain misinterpretations or misunderstandings if you are face-to-face with your teacher and other classmates. But our lesson is not over. Make sure you join us for the second half right here on Studio Classroom.